Hello there. In this webinar, I'll be talking about proper core strengthening for sports performance. First and foremost, let's start with the most important question so we can better understand what we're talking about. What is core? Core is a set of midsection musculature that helps stabilize the spine and the body and allow a transfer of energy. Quick and efficient transfer of energy is one of the most important functions in most sports. When it comes to spinal stabilization, it's much like a guy wire that attaches and holds up a radio tower. Each muscle that surrounds the spine must provide a certain amount of tension and stiffness to maintain the strength of the spine as a whole and keep it from buckling and becoming injured. This is actually how it works when it comes to stabilization in general, and consequently transfer of energy will be great. You see, our body functions as a limb system, and distal movement requires proximal stiffness. If we want to move our legs fast, and arms of course, we need to have a stiff core. Otherwise our limbs' speed wouldn't be as fast and strong as it could. Let's take a cross punch in boxing as an example. The initial force is created in the back foot, transferring up through the leg, hip musculature, core, thoracic spine, shoulder, and finishing with the punching arm fist. A powerful punch wouldn't be possible without proper core stiffness that is critical for transferring energy or force. So in this case, core musculature serves as a bridge between legs and arms. Of course, there is tons of examples in different sports based on the same principle. Also, resisting inertial forces while cutting, changing of direction, jumping, or landing require proper core stiffness. Actually, anything that requires exertion of high speed and static or dynamic force through our legs or arms. Just imagine a basketball. Which one will bounce higher? The inflated one or the deflated one? I think the answer is clear. So your core needs to be this one. I will give a few sport-specific examples later. Now let's mention what is not proper core strengthening first. While exercises like Russian twists, sit-ups, or back extensions may be great at increasing strength, they do little to increase core stiffness. So proper core stiffness is crucial when it comes to core strength. So what to do instead? Let's start with the basics. That is very useful for beginners and as a part of recovery training, anti-movement exercises. In order to enhance the quality of stiffness, one must train the core differently. First, by using isometric exercises built to enhance muscular endurance and coordination. In order to stiffen the torso and limit excessive motion, every muscle of the core must co-contract or work together. When this is done correctly through a bracing action, your body creates its natural weightlifting belt. The next progression is via compound moves. Once your baseline ability to maintain an isometric posture with the core is obtained, the next progression is controlling limb movement with a stable core, combining upper body and lower body movements while maintaining a stable core. For example, squat, deadlift, bend over row, single leg RDL, clean, snatch, vertical shoulder press, etc. Basically any lift with proper mechanics. Of course, you can do this as a beginner with less external loads. It can also be dead bug, bird dog, Pallof press, steer the pot, 3-point planks, Y row, ab rollout variations, etc. Also, if ready enough, here we can start with very complex moves that are very important if we want to learn proper bracing while cutting, changing direction, landing, etc. The main goal is to resist inertial forces by forceful escalation and bracing core at the right time, which trains and strengthens core pretty well in specific conditions. Remember, you should do this stuff when completely rested. Just approach it progressively, which means do it slower and with lighter medicine ball in the beginning. Again, this is extremely useful for most running-based sports. Just make sure to learn proper technique and include progressive overload principles in order to avoid injuries. Again, you should start with a light mat ball or a weight plate once you learn the overall proper mechanics. But remember, never go crazy with loads, as holding too heavy with arms could become a limiting factor. Also, going too heavy will mess coordination and decrease efficiency at least. Now, let's take a look at a few examples. Let's just mention one important thing on squatting, so you can move some big weights safely. Once the breath is taken into your stomach, brace your core like someone is going to punch you in the gut. When we combine these two actions, belly breathing and core bracing, we find something special happens. Our intra-abdominal cavity pressure rises like crazy. This is the most efficient way to stabilize the spine when moving big weight. And don't put your weightlifting belt on until you pass 85% of your 1 repetition maximum. By using a belt all the time, the body naturally starts to rely on the passive support the belt supplies. You can potentially weaken your core by relying on the belt. The last progression, end range core stability. Don't forget that trunk is designed to move. Moving the spine within a stable range of motion, normal mobility, but to actively stabilize at end range of motion is very present in so many sports. Movements like swings, throws, and kicks. We get into problems with core movements like rotation when we depend on our static stabilizers, like the joints and ligaments, to control end range instead of our muscular dynamic stabilizers. Let's take a look at a few exercise examples. Chops, lifts, push-pull movements on a cable, medicine ball drills, etc. The core needs to move during these moves, but you are working in the mid-ranges of motion and controlling end range. This is very useful for sports performance. In sports, as we said, we often see that spine moves in different directions, even lower back in some cases. So if you train your core this way as well, you get functional compound moves that will take at least your core performance to the higher level. Always remember, our body functions as a linked system, and this, to say last progression, is probably a missing link in so many core-specific trainings programs. To make this easy, just take a look how spine moves in different situations during your specific sport. Or maybe it doesn't move at all. And you'll find a way to train your core accordingly. And one more trick for guys who like crunches, sit-ups, and stuff like that. Of course, you can utilize this trick with some more functional exercises for sports performance. So what's the deal? Activating your hamstrings and glutes will force your abdominals to work harder. Doing so limits hip flexor recruitment, which is the area that often takes over during ab training. And while hip flexors can look impressive, that's not the point of working the ab. Professor Vladimir Yanda popularized the concept of reciprocal inhibition, which basically states that when one muscle contracts, the antagonist relaxes. So when you activate your glutes and hamstrings, your hip flexors will somewhat switch off. By inhibiting your hip flexors via hamstring and glute engagement, you isolate your abs better and take some strain off your lower back. You will also increase the level of difficulty of your regular ab exercises. Your abs will fatigue first, which is the entire point of the exercise. Here you can see a few examples.